So to retain that edge, we're going to use the earth green yellowish again, and we're just going to very lightly stroke along. Making sure to keep that tip of the middle sepal. And I'm just going to start to feather that in so it's easier to blend after. And we can always darken this up later. It's just to retain the edge, so we've got a sort of a placeholder, if you like. Now, obviously, when you're getting into tight spaces and you have to turn your hand and stuff, it may be easier for you to turn the paper. And if that's the case, then please do so. For the purpose of this video, I am moving my hand so that the paper stays straight and you can see what I'm doing. But if I was doing this without filming, then be assured I would be turning my paper, just to make it easier. Okay, so that's that area mapped in. Now I'm going to work just a little bit of this, just slightly up the body, only very lightly. And then we're going to put the lemon yellow in next, because we've got a nice light area around the middle. I say the middle, just underneath the middle. And just nice light pressure. And then we've got, it's slightly darker around here, so I'm going to bring it up slightly further. And then we have a bit of reflected light on this side, so I'm not going to take it up too far there. Okay. So now I'm going to work on the top area here with the lemon yellow, and this is just along these top areas, and these have actually started to turn slightly brown, so we'll introduce that as well. But it's much the same principle as the sepals and the leaves. They have this little very pale edge excuse me, this very pale edge around them. So just going to plot those in. And this bottom one. And the bottom one sort of stops here as that edge is disappearing and it goes around the back. Right, so we've got that mapped in. Now we're going to start adding some of our mid colour. So I think I'm going to go in with the permanent olive first and start working in the body. So as you'll see now, going very lightly over the embossed lines, it shows up really nicely. And you can see how we've retained those little areas of white. So I'm leaving some white space because it becomes paler in those areas, and we're going to probably add the earth green or the May green into there. We just want to try and get this main body colour down. And we've got this band of dark here, so I'm bringing it down into the previous colour. And as I said, there's a bit of reflected light there, so I'm leaving that edge because it's going to be slightly lighter. So just darkening up now where I feel it's necessary. So and you can see how effective that embossing is now. Okay, so now we're going to bring in some of the lemon where that needs to be in these little areas of light. And I'm taking it over that May green we added to the shadow area earlier. And slightly up the right hand side. Okay. And then back to the earth green yellowish. And again, so we're just going to darken areas with this now. And bring this up into the permanent olive that we lay down. Right, so we're just going to give ourselves a slight edge here. And take this slightly further than we took the permanent olive. Coming towards that lemon yellow so that it just fades into it. So colour pencils are by no means, you know, a very fast medium to work with, but they are thoroughly enjoyable and very relaxing as well. Once you really get into the flow, they're really, really enjoyable and relaxing. So again, we're just bringing that up to meet the lemon yellow. And again on this side. Let's give ourselves a bit of an edge there. And I don't like to completely saturate the tooth of the paper and fill every single bit of it with pigment. I like to see the paper, I like to see it through the pencil slightly, and it gives another textural element to your work, I find. Unless something is ultra smooth, like, you know, metal or something, I like to see a bit of texture. So again, just working down and bringing that down into this shadow area where the sepals overlap. Now I can see here, now that I've put that in, that I don't have enough of a shadow line there, so I'm just going to slightly deepen that. That's fine. So brush the paper off, and now I'm going to go back to the permanent olive, and I'm just going to darken up some of these areas here. So we are darker down this area here. It's a real band of dark down here. And very slightly across there. And then another darker area around here. And I'm going to take this quite far down and into that area there. And then we also have a darker area here where this curls. And it's also slightly darker here. Where there's a oh gosh, I think I'm losing my voice. Where there's a dip here. There's that little area of dark. Okay, and I'm just going to deepen some bits even slightly further. So with the chrome green opaque, so this bit for example, but because we've got the layers, so many layers underneath, it's not going to go as dark as it would if it was on its own. So that area there. And then this dip here. And this bit here. So this is probably the most complex part, just getting the form right on this this part of the flower. And then we have a little bit of darkness just around here. Okay, and then we're just going to add one more light layer of the earth green yellowish just where we need it. Just to bring all that together. I'm pressing slightly harder, not hard, just slightly harder than the normal light pressure. Okay. Right, let's dust that off. Okay, so I'm just going to go and really sharpen my pencil, my chrome green, and then we're going to come back and add some dark lines in. Right, so I've got a really nice sharp pencil now, and this is where the delicate bit comes in. So where we have the embossed lines and the white areas, I want to, on just one side, which is the right side, because the light is coming from the top left. So on the right hand side of those lines, I just want to add some depth and just stroke along the side of it to add some dark and really make those areas pop like that. And tapering them off as they come to the end. Just gives that a little bit of extraness. If you like. This is really fun, I find. I love adding in detail. That's probably my favourite part of any work, coloured pencil, watercolour, graphite, whatever. I love adding in the detail. There we go. And then with the chrome, no, not the chrome green, we've just used that, the permanent olive, I'm just going to sharpen that up a little bit with my sanding block, just as I showed you. And we're going to bring a few lines up from here, just to sort of meet the others. Only light. And it doesn't have to be all of them. I'm just bringing a few in. Just like that. Okay, so where I said we had some brown bits across here, I'm going to introduce this green ochre. It's a Pablo green ochre. I'm just going to sharpen it. It is a brown, but it's a greeny brown, and it's perfect for this top area here, where it's just a little bit withered. And I'm really looking at the lines here to follow the lines, because I'm just adding in some detail along those edges. I've got a sort of little bit here. And just a tiny bit along the edge there. Actually, maybe that slightly comes down into there, like that. And on this one, there's just a few little notches there. Okay, and that's it for that bit. So now we can put away all our greens. Actually, no, we can't. Just want to even that up a little bit there. That's the problem, you see. I could mess forever. I have to tell myself, stop. Okay, that's better. So now we can move on to the petals. Right, so let's move on to these petals and bring some pinks in. So I'm not going to work on the top petal first, because that's the very, very lightest petal, and I want to sort of baseline first so that I can base my mid-tones and my dark tones around. So we're going to start with this one or this one, I think. So let's just take away some of the graphite. Just being careful not to hit that pale lemon area and take any of that away. And I really want to lighten my graphite a little bit more than I did with the greens, because these pale, well, the very pale pink is going to show the graphite underneath, and I don't want that. So I'm going to start with, so I'm going to start with this Pablo Granite Rose, and I'm going to bring in the shadow area from under this top petal. Now I know this is probably going to be slightly too pale for this, but I can adjust as I go. I don't want to go in too dark initially and risk it looking completely wrong. So we'll just plot this in first and bring in a suggestion of that shadow. I'm just going to bring in the shape of the shadow first. Okay, and now I'm going to use, this is a Luminance pink white, and it really is the only pencil I've found of this colour, and I use it all the time in botanicals. I use it so much, and I'm going to plot in use this to cover most of the body of the petal. Just to give it a nice first layer. Luminance are a dream to work with. They're really lovely pencils. And I'm going into that shadow area as well so that I can blend it out with this pink white. And then taking it up to the tips. And the majority of this petal is still very pale, but it's not as light as that top one. So I think we've got a nice even covering of that now. Now we're going to introduce, it's more of a purpley pink. So we're going to bring in some of the folds now. And this is a Luminance violet pink. So we're going to very lightly stroke these in from the tip downwards. Just bring in the suggestion of where these petals fold. We have that one, and then we have another one here. And I'm doing this in lines more so than circular motions, and that's to add to the correct texture. Right, so we've got a little bit of too much pigment there, so I'm just going to tap it with my blue tack and just get rid of it. And we've got another little bit here. Like so. And we've got some little strokes coming from the edge there. Okay, I'm going to go back to my pink white and just diffuse those slightly and blend them in. So it's all about softness with the petals and retaining that softness. And the pink white is a perfect colour for blending. So I'm going from the outside and blending inwards so that it fades as it comes in the petal. Okay. And now I'm going to go to another luminance colour, because now that I can see, obviously my shadow is far too pale. And this is Burnt Sienna 10%, and this is a lovely, it's a pinky grey. It's a beautiful shadow colour for flowers, and we're just going to introduce that along the edge. There's also two Prismacolors that are great for shadow colours on pink flowers, and it's I think it's Clay Rose and, or I'll have to look them up, but there's two Prismas that are lovely. So let's just add some of this in to the shadow area and give ourselves a nice edge. So we've got some more definition. Could we even bring in a violet grey or a Derwent Drawing Mars Violet into here? Would probably be a nice colour to add. Right, so we've deepened our shadow up slightly. In fact, I'm just going to grab a Mars Violet, 1 second. Okay, so I've just grabbed violet grey, luminance violet grey, and I'm just gonna deepen up the very edge of that shadow with this. That's better. It just brings a bit of coolness to the shadow. Just in those darkest areas. And then just lightly feather it out. And stroke it down this area here. Like that. That's better. Okay. And now I'm going to move on to a Faber Castell. Mine is called Light Flesh. I believe that they've changed the name of this and it's something else now. So it's number 132. So I'll refer to it in in the list of colours as the number as opposed to the name. So I'm just going to bring some of that in over the pink white. Only lightly, and I'm not taking it all the way to the very edge because that colour is not there. So I'm just blending out really some of the colours that we've put down. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to the violet grey. And just add a little bit more depth. Just there. And now I'm going to stroke some of the violet grey, only very lightly, at the very edges of the lines we put in for the folds. And a few extras. This is very, very light, using the tip of the pencil. And I'm going to go back to the pink white and once again blend and pull those out. And until you've got sort of the next layer, the next petals in with their shadow areas and stuff, you don't really get the full effect of this. And then we can always come back and deepen things up later. So it's just to give ourselves a nice base to work from. And then take a bit more of this down and just blend out that Faber Castell that we put in. Lovely blending colour, this. Okay. I'm just going to go back to the burnt sienna and just bring a little more of that in here. Just for a little bit of depth, not much. Okay. Right, so we're going to move on now, and we're going to move on to this, the biggest one here. Okay, so moving on, we're going to plot in the main area, the main body of this in the light flash 132, and just get the majority of this laid down. So nice circular soft motions again. And remembering that we have another petal underneath, because it's difficult for me to see that now with removing so much graphite. So I'm going to get my edges in first. So I can see where I'm supposed to be mainly. Okay. I'm going to butt up to the edge of the petal that's on top that we've just done. Okay, so we've got a nice base layer again now. And then I'm going to go into, I'm going to go back to the violet grey and lightly stroking the shadow. Now we've got a nice glowy area in here, so we're going to bring in another colour there. But the majority of this edge is in shadow. So I'm just going to very gently bring that in. And it will be darker in some places than it is in others. The shadow sort of follows along. So just fading it out to the edge of the shadow line. And it comes along here. And follows the curve of that petal. So just a very light layer. And that comes all the way in to where this sepal sits. Okay. So there's the base for the shadow. So now we've got, like I said, we've got a really nice sort of glowy area just inside here. So I'm going to bring in Faber Castell, and this is Dark Flesh. Again, I think the name has changed on this, so this is number 130. And I'm just going to bring this in here. This is just where it glows. And then I'm also going to bring in a tiny bit of Pablo Rose Pink right along the edge there. And then there's a tiny bit of light just up the center. You probably won't be able to see this, but I'm just adding in a line, just a little line of pink white there. And then we're going to go to the violet pink. No, we're not. We're going to go to the burnt sienna and just blend that out and tone it down slightly. And then we're going to go over the violet grey. Because we don't want that colour so grey, so this will take out the harshness. But we do have a tiny bit more green there. And then just refining that edge. Okay. Now I've got an area of pale up here, so I'm going to blend in that light flesh with the pink white, and just sort of meld everything together, if you like. And this does give off quite a bit of dust, as you can see. So just wipe that away with your brush. And that's just given us a softer look to everything, blended the shadow in. made everything look a bit nicer. So just making sure I've got a nice even layer. I'm going to go back to that, the rose pink of the Pablo. I'm just going to enhance that area slightly. And I'm also going to bring this into the deepest recesses of the shadows. Just to add a bit more interest. And just blend it out slightly, just feather it along. Okay. So now I can see that the lines that we put in here do need to go slightly darker. So I'm just going to add in a little bit more of the violet grey. Just really lightly stroking that in. And then back to the pink white and just pulling it out again. So there's a lot of repetition here. Okay. And I'm also going to add in just a touch of that rose pink into this shadow. So there's a lot of backwards and forwards going between petals, and that's simply because as you're plotting down your darkest darks and your lightest lights, you can then see how your midtones are supposed to be looking. Okay, so now we're gonna bring some of this rose pink again. We're gonna bring it over the pink white very, very lightly, just in certain areas on this petal where the shadow, well, it's a shadow, but it's not a shadow like this area is a shadow. It's just where there's a little fold in the petal. Or folds rather. Okay. And then I'm just going to soften that up with the Granite Rose. Just blend it out a bit. I'm just taking that over the area of shadow again, just to further blend everything. Okay, now we'll add in a bit of the veining. There's not as much on this one, so I'm going to go with that violet pink. And just add in some soft suggestions of where the veins sit. Okay. Again, I'm just going to very gently pull those out with the pink white, just so they're not so harsh and they taper off towards the middle. And then we also have some sort of very light areas where the veins are just catching the light. So I'm going to use a Pablo white and just insert a few of those alongside the darks. You won't necessarily notice these really, you know, they're not supposed to be vivid white lines, they're just there. Now we are going to lighten up this area of the petal, but first I'm going to darken, deepen up around the edge here, where I've missed a bit of the shadow. And then this petal, just this little area, I'm going to lighten it with the white because it's right in the light. And this little edge here. And then I'm going to go back to my burnt sienna and just bring that into the shadow area again. We may very well come back and deepen this up later. We'll see. Let's just soften this edge with the burnt sepia. back to the pink rose and just deepening up where we've lost some definition. So yeah, it's a lot of to-ing and fro-ing, but it's worth it. Well, I think it's worth it. It's enjoyable. Okay. And I'm just going to go over this area slightly more with the pink rose. Just very light. Here. And here. Okay. Right, so we're going to move on to the really thin petal underneath there. And this is quite a simple one, so we're just going to add in, let's go for the violet grey again and just get the shadow line softly in. If you can hear little feet, that's my little boy Marshall, my Labradoodle. Well, he's not that little, but he's padding around. I think you can see the cats outside. Okay, so just going to very lightly get this shadow in, because it's not a strong shadow at all on this one. Okay, and the petal itself is quite pale, so we're going to go in with the pink white and just add the base of that first. Just blend that shadow line as well. Take it to the edge. Okay. Then we're going to add some Granite Rose over the top of that, because even though it's pale, it's not white. So just take that over. And there's no frilly edges on this petal, it's just a nice smooth edge because it folds up underneath the one above. Okay, dust that away. And then we're going to go in with a tiny bit, very, very lightly, go in with a bit of the violet pink just over the shadow line and just slightly blend it out. So the finishing touches for the petals won't come until all of the base is down on all of the petals, so I can see where I'm at and where I need to go. I just like to get my lights and darks in and get some form going, because later on this violet pink will then come around the edges of this petal, because that's That's the colour that I can see there as it goes into the darkness. Well, into the darkness, into the shade. So just get a bit of this plotted down. And then if you want, you can further blend any areas with the Granite Rose. So this one just here, it just takes away the harshness of anything. And then we need a tiny bit more of the Granite Rose just right against this line here. And this is where your sharp pencils come in so handy. Just like that. Okay. So we've got another glowy shadowy area just in here. So we're going to go back to that 130, what I've got called dark flesh, which isn't anymore. I'm just going to pop a bit of that in here. And just there. Not taking it right down into here because it's darker down there. So we'll go back to our violet grey for that. And that comes right in here. And just slightly up and over and into that corally pink. And then we're going to add some of the pink rose just to bring these two together. And tone down that coral. And back to our violet grey, just along this edge here. And again, blend it with the rose pink. And brush away the excess. I can see there it hasn't come quite far enough. Still, I need to come further down into here. So I'll bring my violet grey into there as well. Like that. Okay, so I'm going to leave that area as is for the moment. And then just as we had that light petal there, we've got another very thin one that sits just here. So I'm just going to bring in the shadow line here. Go in with my pink white. I was looking for it then, I couldn't find it. Go in with my pink white for the base. And then into the Granite Rose. and then just brush that away. And we've got quite a light bit here, so I'm going to use my Pablo white and just put in that light edge. It's only a very subtle thing, but it makes a difference, and it also comes around the edge of this one here. So just bring in a little bit of light there. Like that. Okay, so now we're going to bring this underneath petal in. So we're going to start with the violet grey again, and just lightly map in the shadow area under here, just very lightly. And there's not too much of it. Just comes up to about there. And then we're going to, actually no, we're going to bring a little bit more just up here. Okay. I'm going to go to Faber Castell 132 and take that as our main body colour over the shadow to blend. And this is coming up over the whole petal. And this is the darkest petal we've got, because it's right on the underside. So we're going to give that a nice edge, and it comes up to here. Okay, it's got a little curly lip on it there. Like that. And then we're going to bring in some of the violet pink and just very lightly bring it in over the shadow area. And I'm actually going to bring it into there as well. And I'm going to bring a hint of it over the body of the petal as well, over that light flesh. And just a slightly darker area here. And then a very slight bit of shadow area just under that petal there. Don't want it as dark as the violet grey, but there is a bit of shadow there. Okay. Now I'm going to blend that with the pink white. Just soften it all out a bit. like that. Take it up into the tip. Okay. And then again, I'm just going to add a bit more depth here, so a bit more violet grey. Just soften that edge there again with the pink white. And a bit more of the violet pink. And again, just blending it out with the pink white. Like that. And then I'm going to blend this shadow line as well, because I feel it's a bit too dark. So I'm going to get a very nice sharp pencil in a minute and clean that up. And then we have another hint of a petal just poking through here. And I'm going to go back to the pink rose. And just bring that in. Pink rose right down at the base there. And then blend it out with the Granite Rose. It's only a very small area of petal. And then just a tiny bit of the pink white over the top there. Actually, we're going to bring a little bit of the violet pink right into this little bit there. Right, so we're starting to get a lot of shape to it now. So I'm just going to really sharpen my pencils up, and then we'll work on the rest. Right, so I've got my pencils really nice and sharp now. So I'm going to go and I'm going to come and clean up some of these shadow lines and add some depth where I really want the depth to be. So first of all, I'm coming in here with the violet grey. And just cleaning up here and here where I feel it needs to be slightly darker. Now I'm going to deepen up this one here as well. I will blend this out though, but I just want to get it a little bit darker in there. And just in here. So these are just the areas where I feel could benefit from a bit more contrast. And then we have a bit more of a grey tone here. And we have a bit of grey in here. Tiny bit here. And a little bit more just down here. And I'm just going to blend that out a little bit with the pink white, only slightly, and blend this one out a little bit as well. Okay, now I've also got here Faber Castell Burnt Carmine, and this is a beautiful colour that's found a lot in nature. So we're just going to add some of this in where I can see it. So just right along this part where we've got that glowiness, it just runs a bit more purpley pink than I had it. Okay, and then a tiny bit along this edge, just in here. This is just for the very darkest bits. Oh, sorry, I'm just holding my my board still. I draw on a board, so it's slightly elevated, and it was moving then. So just in here. And it's just tiny touches, but they make such a difference. Right in here. Faintly across there. And maybe a tiny bit here. And here. Okay. So that's it with those shadowy areas now. I think I'm happy with those now. So I'm going to go on and do this top petal. Just get this one in. This is the palest one, and then I'm going to come back and add the last bit of detail, alter any tones that need altering, and finish off. So for this top petal, I'm going to go straight in with a base of the pink white all over. This is right in the light, this petal here. So I maybe should have took a bit more graphite off there. So I'm just gonna, oh sorry, just gonna dab away a tiny bit more. There we go. And I'm using a decent pressure to add this. I'm not being overly light with this layer, because this is the main colour of the top petal, so I can afford to be a bit heavier. So bringing it up into those little frilly bits. That comes up and round. Then that one comes over and around. Okay. So now I'd add in the areas where this needs a bit more colour. So we're going in with the Granite Rose now, and just bringing a bit of depth in across here. And down here. Slightly darker. I wouldn't say it's a shadow as such, but it's slightly darker around the edge of this leafy bit than it is on the rest of it. And then shadow in there, a little bit in there. And a little bit there. Just coming from the edges. And then again, I'm blending the edges of that out with the pink white. We want it really soft on this top petal, where it's in the light. We just want little hints of that darker colour. Okay, now we can bring a little bit of detail in, so I'm going to use the pink rose for that. And we've got a very lightly, we've got a slightly darker line, a couple of little bits of veining coming in. And these are sort of just, you know, wiggly fine lines. And then that tip, there's a couple coming down. And I'm going to pull these out with the Pablo white this time, not the pink white, just to create a bit more light in areas. And Pablo white gives it a nice effect. You can really pull some light through now if you want to. And just add a bit of light to the very edges of the petal. Now my shadow line isn't correct here, so I need to come and clean that up. So let's take that that violet pink and just clean that line up. That's better. And while I've got this violet pink, I'm just going to run a few more little suggestions of veining through. And again, diffuse them with the Pablo white. Like that. Okay. Okie dokie. Now moving back to the next petal, I want to add a bit more pink in here. So I'm taking the rose pink and I'm adding some more of that to the shadow area. This is just the finishing off, the finishing touches. I just want it pinker. So a bit more of that in there. And I'm going to pull it up a little bit just in certain areas up to where we put those veins before. Okay. And then I'm just going to strengthen that with a little bit of the burnt Carmine. Okay, and I'm quite happy with the texture that we've got on the edge of this one, so I'm going to leave that alone. Next one down, I'm going to go in again with that rose pink, and we're going to take away a little bit more of the greyness. We still need the grey because it's the base for the shadow, but I just want to diffuse that tone a little bit with a bit more pink. So just adding a bit of that in there. That's nicer. And that's such a good thing about colour pencils, is you can really change the appearance of things in just a couple of layers. So we've got that on, and now I'm going to bring it up slightly again into these areas. And once again, knock it back or blend it out with the pink white, and then over to the violet pink, and we're going to add a bit more of the veining in here. And I can see more of it at the top than I can down these sides, so just a little bit down there. Brush off the dust. And again, just pull them back with the pink white. And I'm going to take the Pablo white and once again just add a few areas of light just from the edge of this petal. Just adds a bit more interest and a bit more texture. You know, it's not going to show up brilliantly, but it's there and it adds to it. That looks a bit more crinkly now. Just tone that one down slightly. Okay. Now along the edge of this petal, we do have some darker bits. So the very fine touch and the very tip of the pink rose, I'm just adding in little bits where the edge is slightly darker, and it's a little bit too much there, so let's knock it back with the white. Okay. And then this petal, I feel I want some more of the pink. So just adjust that. Leaving that light edge, just adding a little bit more pinkiness to it. And blending it in. Same with this one, tiny bit more pink there. And with this underneath one, I want to add some more down here. Just to deepen this one up a bit. So right on the underside, and then in that dark area here. Along that curl. And then just diffusing it with the pink white again. Going back to the violet pink. And bring in a bit more depth there. And again, just blending the edge of that out. Okay, so now I can just see one last bit that needs a little bit of detail down here, a little bit of veining. And there we go. One more thing, I just want to deepen up in here again as well. feel that could do with being a bit darker. Okay, so I'm quite pleased with that. So I mean, we could go on and add a lot more detail in, but I'm quite enjoying how that's looking for now. So I'm gonna finish there and call this one done. So I really hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you've learnt something. And if you do draw along with me, I'd really love to see what you do with this tutorial, and if you could tag me in it on Instagram, then that'd be great, because I'd really love to see them. So yeah, really hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.